Welcome back to Super Metroid. At this point, we have collected every item in the game. That is the maximum missiles, super missiles, and power bombs that you can have if you've collected everything. We also have all 4 energy tanks, all 4 reserve tanks, and every major collectible item. We've defeated all the major bosses: Kraid, Phantoon, Dragon, and Ridley. Which means the final gateway is open. And we can go to Tourian. A location we saw very early on in the game. And though you can come back here after defeating each of the major bosses, I always liked waiting until the very end. This is still a creepy atmosphere. Especially once you come down here now. But you also know you have the power to make it. And we're gonna push on ahead. Someone's stomach growling. So we've made it to Tourian. I just wanted to look at this. We already have the map. We didn't even have to download it, which is curious. As a child, I always pronounced it Tourian. And admittedly, I think Tourian sounds better. But it's I-A-N, it's Tourian. There's a save point just to the right, though I prefer not saving down here. You certainly can. I prefer not because there's nothing to collect down here. It's purely a push straight to the end. And I like leaving the statues intact, so if I want to come back and beat the game, I get to experience the whole ending, so to say. And just like in Metroid 1, we are introduced to Metroids. Also SpaghettiOs. The Metroids have to be frozen. Anything other than the ice beam will simply bounce off of them. And though I think you can kill them with missiles, it's far easier to simply hit them with a super missile. Thanks to the power of the wave beam, most of the Metroids are fairly easy to take care of, especially once you've done this a few times and you know approximately where all of them are. But if need be, simply be cautious, move slowly, and if you have to jump, be prepared to fire in the air, because the game makes you do that several times. I always think there's one more there. You have to wake that one up by jumping down to its level, but the other ones you can see from above. These enemies here are only vulnerable to the super missile. But they also don't need to be killed, so save your super missiles. Let me tell you, even in the end of the game, the very end of the game, when you're as powerful as you can be and you're on a kill mission, they still manage to make something just a little unsettling. Don't know what these growths are. And that is a large Metroid. So I can't do this, so I'm just gonna get stuck. Nope. Ah! I didn't even begin to do it right. So once this Metroid gets on you, you can't get it off of you. It's really that simple. It left us alive and made the same sound as the infant Metroid. Which you would think, and this is a curious note, you would think that maybe we wouldn't recognize at this point in the game. It's been so long since we heard it, but you hear it on the title screen every time you boot this game up. Still full on missiles. And thankfully there's an energy recharge here. So we don't know what's happened to the infant Metroid. Either Mother Brain and the pirates have done something to it to hasten its growth, to overgrow it, so they can clone other Metroids off of it. There are also theories that, especially because it was the egg right behind a Queen Metroid, that the infant may have been a Queen Metroid. And that's simply the natural life progression of the Queen Metroid. It at least seemed to recognize who we were. And of course, it still thinks we're its mother. The boss door means the boss is ahead. There's a save point here. I highly suggest you do not save here. You are, in fact, past a point of no return. A few rooms back, I believe it was the one with the sand torso, has a gray door that will not open. You cannot leave. So, before we go in, I want to handle this fight relatively vanilla, but I want to take the time to speak on some things that can be done, because I don't want to, let's say, interrupt the ending by going back and showing the fight or progression in different ways. The first of which is a move that I have had a great deal of trouble dealing with, or a great deal of trouble pulling off, and that's the Zebetite bars. So the Zebetite bars are handled in a very interesting way in Super Metroid. There is, at any given time, only one Zebetite bar. You would think you have to fight your way through several of them, just like you did in the NES Metroid, and you do, but there is, in fact, only one Zebetite bar. As soon as you destroy one, the next one appears. You can only ever see one at a time, so you don't notice this. But what this means is if you can get past one without destroying it, all the other ones are empty, and you don't have to destroy any of them. It is possible to do this. The Zebetite bars have hitboxes, hurt boxes. But what you have to do is abuse invincibility frames in a very specific way. There's a position where you can freeze a Rinka. When you jump on this Rinka in a very specific way, you will actually be shoved into the wall by just a pixel or two. You can then do a short hop, which takes you onto the Zebetite platform. And given that you are a couple pixels into the wall, this actually pushes you a couple pixels into the Zebetite bar, and then you can just run through it. You also have to be temporarily invincible while doing this, by being hit by another Rinka, or I believe simply clipping into something may give you some invincibility frames. If you are not temporarily invincible, the Zebetite bar will simply hurt you and knock you out of it. This is a trick that I have had almost no luck actually pulling off. If I save state and do it for a while, I can eventually get it. In an actual run or something, I cannot do it. And then that brings us to the Mother Brain herself. To speak on it to speak on this without speaking on it, so to say, there is a way to abuse the phase transition, and this is actually fairly easy to do if you know what you're doing. There is a way to abuse a phase transition, where, after getting hit by one of her moves, you're actually locked to the ground if you're below a certain amount of HP, and cannot move. She then moves on to the next phase, and a cutscene plays out. There is a brief delay, however, between her hitting you with her attack and the actual trigger for the cutscene. Which means, if you have enough health that you can survive the attack, and not trigger enough health to not immediately trigger you being locked to the ground, and then you can damage yourself fast enough, you can actually get her to think she's ready for the cutscene and the phase transition when you are not locked to the ground. This gives you a lot of freedom throughout the cutscene and the final phase, which lets you do a considerable amount of damage before the phase even officially begins, cutting the entire final phase out very quickly. As I said, this particular trick I can do fairly easily, fairly consistently, but for the purposes of this, I simply wanted to explain something that can be done, and then show you the fight as it's intended. So the Zebetite bars can only be damaged by missiles and super missiles. Super missiles are kind of a waste, so just use regular missiles. So of course we have the SpaghettiOs. We have the little spitters, which are unbelievably annoying, though they're not half as annoying as they were in the NES Metroid. So damaging Mother Brain in this phase also damages the glass container. And they are only vulnerable to concussive blasts missiles. So your charge beam does not work. Actually, it may work on Mother Brain here, but it does not work on the glass. And once you, as I mentioned, once you break a hole in the glass, damaging her also damages the glass. And we did it. Except we didn't. Missiles are fairly useless at this point, and we have far too many of them. Even though you can fire them very quickly, the regular missiles simply don't add up to enough over time. One of the most dangerous attacks that she has in this fight is actually the blue rings, because you cannot use your screw attack for invulnerability from them. And they come at a somewhat random time. This red beam is the next most powerful, next most dangerous move she has. But once you can dodge it, it hurts a lot, but once you can dodge it once, it's fairly easy to continue dodging it. She uses the red laser at 25% HP, and she uses the rainbow laser there at 0 HP. That's right, she's technically dead. This rainbow laser is unavoidable, absolutely unavoidable. Even if you go out of bounds, it still hits you. And I believe that was my window there, actually. If I wanted to try to skip a phase before getting, or after getting hit by the previous laser, I would have had to damage myself considerably. That's right, we didn't see her put the bombs out much. They're kind of annoying. Best way to damage yourself is by running into her leg, which grants no invulnerability for rings. It hurts a lot. And the baby Metroid's back! Yeah, get her! See Samus looking up at it, just watching. So in making this fight, the developers actively wanted to make Mother Brain, like, as gross as they could. That's why she, like, drools so much. It's just... And it's giving me the energy it took from Mother Brain. So in order to let the cutscene play out, even if you only have, say, 4 energy tanks total, the infant Metroid will stay on you for the full length of this cutscene. And trying for one more grab. It doesn't quite make it. But we're granted the Hyper Beam. This is unbelievably easy. You have full HP and the most powerful weapon in the game. The Hyper Beam, I believe, does 1,000 damage a hit. I just get hit, which knocks me into the back corner. And that lets almost all of my attacks land. And we can pause, and if you look, it is in fact the Hyper Beam. All of our beams have been combined and replaced with that. What is the Hyper Beam exactly? We're not sure. It's thought to be the remaining energy that Mother Brain had. And of course, there's a time bomb. So this is so strong, we can actively shoot through the rising bars. This room is interesting because you can run through this way and make your way around. Or, if you want to be faster, those are speed booster blocks. The next room is a little more convoluted, but you're climbing up and around. I try to kill him because he's kind of annoying. And then from here, we are simply climbing our way up all of these tiny, tiny platforms. And we'll come out somewhere you may recognize. Except we don't have to climb it this time! I don't know if there's any hint that you can do that other than experimentation. So in the NES Metroid, it was actually only Tourian that exploded. But it sure looks like a lot more than just that is going up this time. But first I'm gonna go down here. You're heavily locked out of where you can go in this ending sequence, but this is open. And we get to save our good friends. If you haven't saved them, I don't consider your completion of the game an official completion of the game. I'm sorry, that's just how it is. And that's game. We made it. And if you look just to the right, so did the animals. $4.37. Not bad, considering I just, like, wandered around and oftentimes stood there talking for tens of minutes. I did mention I wasn't going for speed. And I may also have a present for you near the end of this. But that... oh, this music! Triumphant, you did it! You took a planet with you. And admittedly, that was the planet that Sims grew up on, so that probably wasn't exactly, an easy thing. But... so that is Super Metroid. There's still, even now, a lot that I didn't have the chance to really talk about. Like, for example, on CRT TVs, there weren't strict pixels. And in turn, the image was stretched just a little bit to a 4:3 aspect ratio, when the Super Nintendo internally did not display at 4:3, it displayed closer to a square. So the image was stretched. And if you look at some things, like the Morph Ball, it is actually perfectly spherical. So when stretched to 4:3, it actually looked just a little oblong, but something that small was hard to pixel around or handle in other ways. So internally, it's simply a perfect sphere of pixels. However, the intro, when we first flew down to land on planet Zebus, that big Zebus in the background, was actually slightly squished horizontally. It wasn't a perfect circle, pixel-wise. This was so when it was stretched to 4:3, it did appear as a perfect circle. I have so much to say I've already been talking for so long, but I have so much to say about Super Metroid. I just love this game so much, and I love everything that's come from it. I love Dear Force! I love everything that's come from it. I love... I just got the helmet on. I love everything that's come from it. I love everything that's became of everything to do with it, with randomizers and challenge runs, and even if it was unintended, how high the skill ceiling is, and how many secrets there are to discover in this game. Even now, we're still learning and finding out new things, and even though at this point it's mostly like weird, obscure glitches. Like, did you know in Gold Torizo's room, there is a dev code that you can put in that will just give you a stupid amount of items. Like, I don't even know how long it took us to figure that one out. There's also a beam combo you can do by how the spazer is automatically turned off. If you put your inputs in weird, and I've done this before, kind of glitching spazer to still be on, you get... It's kind of called the VAR beam, because you see the word VAR appear next to plasma, but that's really just the graphic glitching out and the VAR from Varia appearing next to it. But depending on what item or what weapons you have equipped, when you do that, you get a number of different weird, glitchy beam combos, many of which simply crash the game. But there's also things like, say, there's the chainsaw beam, which I think if you don't fire it point blank, the game crashes. But if you do, it does bomb damage every frame you're in contact with something. Or something like that. There's the chainsaw beam, there's the murder beam, maybe I'm thinking of the murder beam. There's the space-time beam that effectively resets the game state back to when you first arrived on the planet. But it still keeps you with all your items. So you can go collect all these fancy items in the space-time beam, and then, like, you're just kind of at the beginning of the game again. I don't know what exactly that entails. Like, are the bosses still dead? I don't know. But speaking about the game itself, I can only hope over the course of this you've gained some insight into not only the game, but some insight into me. What I enjoy about this game, why I enjoy this game. I've already mentioned several times in the past that I'm a fan of cosmic horror, let's say, the Eldritch, that kind of stuff. And the feeling of unease that you get throughout this entire game is peak that. And honest to goodness, may be part of the reason that I got into cosmic horror in the first place. But also the inspirations from H.R. Geiger. Like, and his art is amazing. It's some of my favorite art. Because it's not scary. It's just wrong. And I love the dark, serious tone that the art direction took in this game. The Ridley in this game is terrifying to look at. On a very, like, real level. But also, not only that, not only the mood, but the atmosphere. I think they captured an alien atmosphere wonderfully. All these weird environments, intermingled with more real things, but also bits and pieces that just don't even make sense. Like, what is Red Tower? What is that? It's all these blocks of red. Was that man-made or Chozo-made, at least? Is that just the natural way that stone forms? And there's always weird little constructs everywhere, like in the big room in Meridia, which you would think is a mostly natural room, but has these weird cube things in the background. Like, what even are those? It's all these little things where they set to make an alien environment, and they didn't have to rationalize or justify things with, well, what is this really? What is this? What is this? We have to make this a real place. It doesn't have to be a real place. It just has to do what it set out to do, which is be alien and unsettling. And there are plenty of items hidden in this game that are difficult to find, if not nearly impossible to find. But every time they're always almost insignificant. Missile expansions, or some such. The kind of thing that you won't find your first run through. But you'll beat the game and see your rate for collecting items is like 84% and go, well, what did I miss? And then you go back and you want to find it and you scour the place. And you may even have to go look online for some of them. Chat with friends, figure out where they found them. And that was how you did it back in the day. There were no forums or anything when this game came out. You had a player's guide if you wanted to go buy it, and your friends on the schoolyard. But odds are better than not, some of them were playing it too. And you could put your heads together and one of them go, oh yeah, I did this here and I found this thing here. Oh. But for the general progression, it's still relatively straightforward. At any given time, you only really have one place to go. Like, they start you out on Criteria, and you can't really explore much. You're siphoned off to Brinstar, where you explore through Brinstar and then get trapped down in Lower Brinstar and Upper Norfair. So, again, even though you're gaining all these neat items to explore, you're limited. You can't just not have any idea where to go next. And it's not until you take out Kraid and get the speed booster and the ice beam that you can get out. And the only way out leads you to the power bombs, which you have to collect in order for complete freedom. And now that you have power bombs, the world is your oyster. Go exploring, see what you can find. You're even back where you started, so you'll do a whole loop around trying to figure out where to go next. And you'll explore a great deal, everything you can. But the place you have to go is where you just came from, almost ensuring that it'll be the last place that you check, so you've had that chance to feel powerful while you explore. Then you go back down, and you're feeling good about yourself, and you fight Crocmire, and you don't feel good about yourself anymore. But you get the grappling beam, so you can cross that moat, which I'm sure you saw right after you got the power bombs. After this, the game becomes a little bit more linear. You go into Wrecked Ship. You completely clear Wrecked Ship and you're done. You go into Meridia. You completely clear Meridia and you're done. There are no items in Wrecked Ship that you have to come back to later. There are no items in Meridia that you have to come back to later. Unless, of course, you missed them. And in that regard, it's almost a little bit more like Metroid 2. But not with a very strict, this is your next area, the lava lowers, now this is your next area sense. You still have to explore and find your way there, and instead it comes across as simply a place you haven't explored yet. At any given time, you're just pushing forward, exploring what you haven't yet explored. And that's what I love so much about Super Metroid. The sense of exploration. The mood, the environment, and the sense of lonely exploration. At no point do you have a guide or a computer. Even in Metroid Prime, your ship's computer identifying where to go next. At no point do you have anything. You are very alone. And the only one you can speak to is yourself. That's all you've got. That's all the help you've got. And so every accomplishment you make, every bit of progress you make, is on you. You did it. You found it. You beat it. And you did it by exploring this weird, alien world that does not make any sense, and oftentimes very much wants to kill you. This has been Super Metroid. Until next time, everyone.